Welcome back to Visible Kindness, and this is the show where we share stories, we feel kindness, and we inspire legacy. On this episode especially, and we like to build something that's bigger than ourselves. Before we actually get started in having a conversation so you know what's going on, watch this.
A local musician has discovered never-before-recorded arrangements written for Frank Sinatra and is recording them for the very first time. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Eva Anderson is at a studio in Pennsauken where they're breathing new life into history.
At Soundplex Studios in Pennsauken, musical history is being made.
Stars.
As Brandon Thomasello sings The Gal That Got Away, arranged for Frank Sinatra and the Count-Basie Orchestra, he's making sure it's not the song that got away, preserving history by recording this arrangement for the very first time.
So it was written June 25th, 1965. Probably hasn't been played in 59 years.
It took a lot of work for Thomasello to get his hands on this and other scores arranged by the late Billy Byers. Brandon unearthed them online through the Library of Congress.
I must have been bored one day and was Googling Frank Sinatra arrangements.
He came across a collection of music arranged for Basie and Sinatra that was performed live on tour in the 60s.
Look how neat it is.
Some of those arrangements were recorded on the album Sinatra at the Sands, but for others he found,
He performed them live, but there's no known recordings of any of them.
Tomasello wanted to change that and continue Sinatra's legacy. The 32-year-old has been listening to Old Blue Eyes since he was a child.
I grew up with my grandparents, so that's where the interest in Frank Sinatra started.
And his grandfather says Tomasello wasn't just a fan, but a scholar of Sinatra's music.
The amount of study, the amount of effort, the amount of time and work, he absorbed that, and it is now part of him.
So Tomasello got in touch with the arranger's son, Bryant Byers, who not only gave him permission, but flew in from Oregon to play trombone on the recording.
A lot of times I get asked to do things like this, and oftentimes I turn them down. But I know that Brandon has such passion for the music.
The album will be called Brandon Thomasello, The Lost Sinatra-Basie Arrangements with the City Rhythm Orchestra.
The least I could do to someone that brought me and my grandparents so much joy is to try to keep his name going and the music going and those arrangers.
Every note he sings is a part of his love letter to the art form that will be forever etched in history. Eva Anderson, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Very nice. Somewhere the chairman of the board, no doubt, is smiling.
I have to say, the first time I saw that, I couldn't believe it. It was like I could see not only Brandon, what the talent that you have for doing what you're doing, and for so much of your life you've looked into this, and your grandfather was just so, you guys look so much alike. It's interesting, it's so cool. And then to know, look at what your team is doing behind the scenes to bring all of this music up and to have this film created, it just was so exciting. Brandon, why don't you start us from the beginning? What brought you to the moment where you first discovered the Sinatra arrangements?
So an arrangement is what the orchestra is playing behind the singer. And in the world of this type of music, with Sinatra especially, there's a lot of people that do the music, but they have transcriptions. So that's where someone will sit and listen to the record and write out what they're hearing. So to me, it was important to set myself aside and be a little different and get as many of the original arrangements as we could. So photocopies of what Frank traveled with, or the scores, anything like that. So I was researching online one day and I discovered that collection at the Library of Congress. And long story short, so this is one of the scores. That's what we got. And this is then given to, so this has all the instruments, the voice, the saxophones, the trumpets, the trombones, and then this gets given to a copyist who writes out the individual parts for the musicians to play. So it is the original arrangement right from the source. The significance of these, in 1965, Frank was exclusively touring with the Count-Basie Orchestra. And it was the beginning of a project that would end at the Sands Hotel in Vegas in January of '66. So throughout that whole summer, Billy Byers and Quincy Jones and Chico O'Farrell were just writing arrangements to fit that Basie style of songs that Sinatra had already made famous, to record at the Sands dates for the album. So they were just writing and writing and writing, and you can look at the dates on the scores, and some of the songs are dated the same day. They just wrote these things that fast. And Billy, to look at Billy's scores is interesting because they're written in ink; they're not in pencil. So when I found everything at the library, I realized it was everything that was on the Live at the Sands album, which for me was great because here's the original arrangements. Then I discovered those 11 others that, again, they're songs you know, In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning, Too Marvelous for Words, All the Way, but I never heard them done in a Basie style. So those were the ones that really were piquing my interest. And we got all the scores, we had all the parts written out, and one day I was here at the studio talking to George, and I happened to tell him that I had these arrangements. And it was really George's, not expertise, but like vision that we can do something with these arrangements. And I love the music so much, I don't think it should be sitting in a box, just wasting away. You're talking about probably the greatest singer with the greatest career of the 20th century, who worked with the greatest musicians, the greatest arrangers, and to have the originals and know for a fact that after that tour was over, he didn't use them. So, when we recorded them last summer, that was really a surreal feeling because you knew that these hadn't been seen, looked at, or touched, or played in 59 years. And now that we're gearing up to do the show at resorts, where Sinatra performed, where I got my start, and it's the first time they're getting played in public in 60 years, it's really cool.
I have a hard time just believing and accepting what you just said because I've never. It's meeting someone like you and George and Art. It's just such an honor to have met you guys and be working with you. And I'm going to be like a lot of people watching to this podcast or watching the podcast or listening to it as well. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Listen to you talk about it. What did it feel like the very first time you sang these types of songs, this type of music that is not out there? It's like, what went through your mind? What kind of, did you have any emotions that are specific for that?
Well, it was, you can hear Frank Sinatra sing All the Way or In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning, and there are these beautiful Nelson Riddle string arrangements with the full 36-piece orchestra. So when we first heard them, was in this room. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is the first time I have to sit back and think. Again, not that I'm impersonating Frank Sinatra, but you want to do it justice, so I needed to take all of the knowledge I had of Sinatra and his style and think, how would he approach doing this beautiful ballad that you can hear him do with the full orchestra? How would he approach it, doing it with just that Basie big band? And it's still done as a ballad, but it's not soft. It's got horns and so when I got in the booth for the first time, I remember thinking, okay, this is real. I gotta. There's definitely pressure because when you're talking about him and his fans, he's got very critical fans of anybody that's trying to do his music, and I'm trying to think. It's an honor to be able to do it, especially knowing that we're the only ones that can do this specific show or this specific album that we did.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I've heard you a couple of times, and I just found it so fascinating how this happened. But when you say that you got this music, these arrangements from the Library of Congress, how did that happen? Because I've heard on the news people going to the Library of Congress to get something or whatever, and it's like it's the biggest library in the country and possibly the world, and it's not an easy thing to do. And like, well, why was it there? What led you there, and how did you get it?
So I was researching and I found the Billy Byers collection on their website, and the library will let you can make an appointment and you can go there and look through it and see it in person. You can't take it home, you can't make a copy of it, but you can go and see them. Naturally, I wanted more than that, and I sat there and I gathered all the information, the box numbers, the locations, the folder numbers, and I wrote it all down. I mean, I spent like a day doing all of this, and I remember sitting back going, "What the hell did you do that for? It's the Library of Congress. You're not going to have access to that." And I sat back, and first person that popped in my head was a friend of mine who is a politician, Tom Knox. I said, if anybody's got a political connection that I could just pick up the phone and call, would be Tom. And Tom and his wife Linda have been coming to see me sing since I started. So I called Tom and I said to Tom, "Do we have a connection at the Library of Congress?" And he laughed and said, "I'm on the board of the Library of Congress." So he hooked me up with the girl that runs the music department, who called me the following day, who said, "We'll pull all the boxes and you can either come and make the copies or we can make you the copies. But before you do that, you have to get permission from the buyer's estate." And I said, okay. So she sent me Billy's son's information, Bryant Byers, and Bryant lives in on the West Coast. So I called Bryant, and he called me back. He was coming home from vacation, and he was in the car for 3 hours. And he said, "I have time to talk." And we spoke about it, and I just explained to him how much respect I have for the music and the arrangers and Sinatra. And him and I really hit it off. And he wrote me a letter of permission, and we sent it to the Library of Congress. And it might have been 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an email with these massive PDFs of the scores. And fast forward to starting the project, Bryant not only flew in to play lead trombone, but Bryant is also a very talented artist, and he drew the cover of the album. So it's really neat to have the Byers family involved, and we love them all so much. I mean, Bryant is such a nice guy, and Bryant is coming this summer to play lead trombone in the show. His sisters will be at the show. His wife will be at the show. His mother will be at the show. So it's really cool to have everyone involved. Bryant playing, his father's arrangement, him drawing the cover. It's just keeping the whole thing connected.
This is incredible. You have an amazing story, and you just mentioned this event coming up this summer. I'd like to move on to talking to Art for a while here, and let's get the back end side of the film. And I like using the term capturing a legacy, because that's what's going on here. It's not just putting on a show, but there's a legacy going on here that you're building up from what used to be and is becoming back to life again. So let's go behind the camera. So Art, you've produced for some huge names and done extremely well, getting an award-winning Emmy producer and filmmaker. And what draw you to this particular story, and what made you say, yeah, I want to do this? Because you can't say yes to everything as a filmmaker. This is there's so many films that are out there. What brought you into this? What made you say yes? And give us some background on yourself too, please. Tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I've been working in film and television as a producer, editor, director for about 30 years. And did everything from documentaries, reality TV, scripted, unscripted, whatever. I've done it all. And so how I got into this thing is my wife is doing a project with George here at the Soundplex. And he mentioned to her that they're doing this album here, and maybe Art can talk to us. Maybe he could give us a hand making a film about this thing. And I said, yeah, I love Sinatra. My mom was a big Sinatra fan. She would when she lived in New York as a kid, she would skip school to see him in concert somewhere. And this is like in the 40s. So I still have all of her 78s, a stack of 78s that were all Sinatras. So I was involved in that from then. We met him, we met Brandon at his grandfather's place, where his office is, where all of his memorabilia is. And this guy, talk about obsessive, compulsive. This guy is Sinatra nutcase. He's got everything that you could ever think of Sinatra. And I fell in love with him and his grandfather and just the story behind all this. And this became my obsessive, compulsive thing. And I've been married to this thing. And we recorded it here at the Soundplex. This place is amazing. This place is a character in itself. And to listen to this music recorded live, sitting in this, the vibration of that music being played, I'm in the room with it. It was incredible. It was the most energetic, palpable thing I've ever felt and doing anything. It was just really incredible. So we filmed this thing. We filmed the recording. We filmed the mixing. They did a couple of little concerts that they were at. We just did a bunch of things, and looking forward to doing this one in Atlantic City, because this is going to be the ultimate for all of this, because it's a circle and it's a story, and the backstory behind this guy and behind him and this place. This is movie gold, because it's like you're seeing this drama and passion and love for not only Frank Sinatra, but for music and for the arts. And it's just, we have not been paid. Crew has not been paid for a year, and we're still doing this thing. That's how much we're committed to this thing.
You just mentioned something here that I don't want to just to go skip by, but you mentioned something about, and Brandon mentioned it too, something happening this summer and at this event. Why don't you tell us about that event that's coming up?
Well, this is the concert that he started out doing an internship, or not an internship. He was a resident at the Resorts International in the Superstar Theater, where Frank performed. We're going to take this music that he created for this album in that theater where he started, and we're going to record this concert there. And we have a crew of like 6 cameras that we're going to record, and they're all amazing professional cameramen. And we're just going to make this. We're going to record this whole concert for film, and we're going to put it into this documentary we're creating.
Yeah, it just blows my mind, and I'm excited to be there for sure. I knowing all that I know, I want to be there as well.
I also want to interject that the Superstar Theater, Frank played several places in Atlantic City, but the Superstar Theater is the only one that still exists. And he has been quoted saying it was his favorite. It's a big room. It's 1,300 seats. It's a pretty big room, but this will be my 50th show in that room. And it's probably the biggest one we've ever done, and it's the one that means the most. But I've played 1,500 seat rooms. I've played 400 seat rooms, 300 seat rooms. Even though it's that big, it still feels so intimate. The 3 of us went down there because they had never been in the room, and I wanted them to experience the history of just walking backstage and being in the dressing room, which hasn't changed. It's the same dressing room that Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Sammy Davis, Don Rickles, name anybody from back then. This is the place, and everything is the same. Am I wrong?
Oh my God, it's incredible.
I mean, the history is just, you walk backstage and in the hallway, it's all the pictures of the people that were there. And to think that we get to do this specific project in that room, and it's the only room in Atlantic City that still exists and is still used that Sinatra did perform in.
Let me ask you one more question, George, when it comes to this. Why? Because more than the technical side of it and Brandon's performance skills, why do you think the world needs to have this? Why do you think this would grab attention so much in our culture today, which I know you wouldn't be doing if that opportunity wasn't there?
We can start off by kind of giving the origination of the whole process, because I met Brandon several years ago when he was working under an audio engineer here, Randy Weaver, under a prior tenant that built a control room. It was Victor Records, and they wanted to press vinyl and build record players, but it was a great model, and everyone knows who Victor Records was. During COVID, they had to move out, but I kind of took the place under my wing and turned it into a kind of a music and art complex, which included an upgraded recording studio. But I had met Brandon several years ago, and then he came in again last summer or last spring, talked to me about this project of these lost arrangements from Frank Sinatra, who happens to be a fan of mine. I actually have a Frank Sinatra watch on today. But I just love his music. And maybe it was because of what I listened to back in the day when I was smaller, on AM radio. But Frank Sinatra was a big fan of mine. I love his music, and it's authentic music. It's about life and love, and you don't get a lot of that today in today's music. So when he came to me regarding these lost arrangements, I jumped all over. I said, yeah, let's do it, because that'll put me on the map, because we had just opened up in February of 2024. This is a great project. It's got a lot of gravitas, and Brandon's a great performer, and City Rhythms Orchestra is, probably one of the best big bands in the country. So with that being said, they came in here, and I'm thinking through the whole thing. I said, man, in addition to recording this album here, let's film it and turn this into a story, because the Soundplex for me is all about telling stories. And the stories can be about anything. It could be music, it could be art, it could be just life in general. But I think, in this day and age, just to kind of get back to your question, there's not a lot of authentic material out there. There's a lot of BS, and you see it all day long on the internet, on social media, etc. We wanted to be a foundation for authentic material, and there's nothing more authentic than Frank Sinatra and big band music, and no one does it better than Brandon Thomasello. I've seen him perform live. I've seen him in the studio. It's breathtaking. We did a show at Scottish Rite, which is a local theater that we wanted to kind of get in front of a live audience. These arrangements had never been heard, and the show was spectacular. The crowd was raving, and we filmed it. It's going to be part of the documentary, but we wanted to piggyback that with a show in Atlantic City, and I think this whole story about Frank Sinatra and Brandon's story, and then having Art with all his expertise, putting all this stuff together, is a great story. And that's why we wanted to film this thing. And we want that funding to happen, because once it does, people are going to see a great story, because every day I see people streaming this, streaming that, Netflix, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be something that everyone's going to want to watch, because it's all about perseverance for one, but it's all about a guy's vision to kind of go back into history and do something that we need. And Brandon Thomasello and the efforts that he went through to kind of get these arrangements, and then putting them all together here and recording them, and then finding Art through a kind of a weird way through a secondary relationship, is spectacular. And all these things kind of seem to happen. So now we want to take this story and take this authentic material that was made years and years ago for a global icon, and now we're putting them all together, and not just song, but also in film, to tell the world what the story was and how it was important to not just us, but to, I think, humanity in general, because everyone is touched by music. And I think this music kind of really reaches in deep, because it is all about life, and it's about love. And those are the things that are important in this world today. So I want to thank Brandon, for one, for bringing this project to Soundplex Studios, for one, but also already hanging out with us and doing a lot of work without being paid, bringing filmmakers in here that aren't getting paid. And now we want to take this thing to the next level. And that's why we need this funding. It's important to finish the story, and we're not going to stop. That's the bottom line. So folks, get on board with something that's super special, with an iconic person like Frank Sinatra, and a great performer like Brandon, and an artist like Art, that can bring all this thing to fruition and show something spectacular that your name could be a part of. And Ed, I want to thank you for bringing us all together like this, and telling our story, and really kind of giving us a kind of a medium to kind of spread the word. And you've been doing a great job. I've only met you for a month now, and you're putting all the pieces together to make this happen, and we appreciate it. And now I feel really good gut feeling that this is going to happen. And I'm excited about the future and looking forward to it.
And I want to interject that, you know, it none of it would have been possible without George, because it's all right. None of it would have been possible without George, because as a performer and a singer, that's what I focus on. But George is who turns it into a business and makes it work. And, when we were talking about putting it together, we could have done it easier ways. You don't have to bring in 18 guys and record in one big room. You can bring in 5 guys and overdub everything. But the whole idea of it was to do it the way they used to do things. Because as nice as it can sound, if you overdub like that, it doesn't have that authentic sound of everybody sitting in one room and bleeding into each other's microphones and capturing the essence of that era. So another big part of the project was making sure we did it the right way. The band was in the room. I was in the vocal booth. I mean, every way we did it is the way Frank Sinatra recorded. The biggest difference is I was in a booth. Frank Sinatra hated being in a booth. There's a video of him at Capitol Records in the 90s when he recorded the Duets album, and they set up these little like divider things, so he'd be isolated from the band, and he walks in and says, "What's that? I don't sing in spaceships." And they had to move it because he needed to stand in the middle of the orchestra. And from experience, I can understand where he gets that from, because when you're just speaking of on stage, when you're on stage and there's 13 horns blowing behind you, I can't even describe the energy that you feel. And so we've been doing it the right way, but George was the one that really made just starting it come to life.
And I have to say, also being in the room, I just want to say, being in a room with that, and recording that, you could feel that energy, and even watching it on film, watching it on a screen, you could feel that energy coming through, because it's palpable, and it's like live. It's live, and and there's a power to it that just transcends the screen, and it's just really, to bring that to people, to see this, to witness this. It's my privilege, just my pleasure to be a part of it, and I'm grateful for being a part of it. It's exciting. It's wonderful.
And it allows everybody, us, you, anybody that's going to help us out get this going. You're becoming a part of the Sinatra legacy.
Yeah.
Our culture's just changed so much, and you can't. I don't know if you will ever see anything like this again in our lives, but thankfully, with everybody's got 70-inch televisions in their living rooms now with stereo equipment. They can watch what you're creating in their home environment. Why don't each one of you tell us? You kind of did already, but this will bring us to a close in the show. But give us an idea how you personally feel about carrying this responsibility forward, more than just, hey, I have an opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into it, but to put it in simple terms, it's all about the human connection. I built this place. It's my masterpiece. It's my life work. My father was an artist. My grandfather was a nightclub singer. So I have this musical, artistic pedigree. But when I envisioned this building from a prior tenant, seeing the music that was happening here, I kind of ran with that whole music concept, because there's one thing that's universal in this world today, is that music is universal. People can not like a certain song or love a certain song, but it's something that brings people together. And that's kind of initially why I built this place, so we can have events, we can have meetings, whether you're a business or you're a musician or you're a band that want to bring some of your friends and family together, or fans to perform, or you're a business that wants to tell a story. We have a podcast studio, we have a recording studio. So we have this space that people can do that. So it's all about the human connection for me, and that's what was important. And having Frank Sinatra, or the arrangements from Frank Sinatra and Brandon, perform them here on the musical side was just earth-shattering, because it's a friend or an icon that I saw as a kind of almost not necessarily a mentor, but someone I looked up to and said, "Well, those were great times back in the '60s." Because I'm a rock and roll fan. I love the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, etc. But I was a fan of big band music because I liked Frank Sinatra. And the fact that I had the capabilities or the luck of being able to have someone like Brandon come in with the Cities of the North and perform that was a big part of what I wanted to do here is kind of bring a high level of entertainment value, but also a vehicle that can bring folks together, whether it's an arena like Scottish Rite or the one that we're going to be doing on July 25th, the Superstar Theater. It's going to be special because this is kind of why I'm doing this. It's not about, I mean, obviously you have to make money. We have to sustain ourselves. But the bottom line, bringing people in here and watching them perform and record music. And I have lots of arts on the wall too. I have a lot of different type of art. So it's special to see that stuff on display and people's really psyche and what they built their lives on to be on display and people appreciating that. That's what art's all about. And art's really the foundation of life. I mean, you got to have art in your life, or I don't mean this art. I mean, yeah, you have art. You gotta have art.
I was gonna go for that. He is that special. He really is.
I don't want to just down art, but I'm thinking art in
yes,
the bigger
yes,
picture. But
yes.
for me, it's about connection and using music as a foundation to kind of bring people together, and that's kind of what it's all about because the world needs it. And society needs it. So I'm excited about the project. And once again, once we get all this stuff done and all the material that you're putting together, it'll be great to get this out to folks that we're in contact with, and folks that I think can really jump on board with a project like this, because I think a lot of people feel the same way we do, and I think they'll jump on board to tell a story that's authentic, inspirational, and important from a standpoint of iconic story like a Frank Sinatra and Brandon going through all the efforts to kind of put this all together. So I appreciate it. And Ed, thanks for putting this on. Appreciate your time and efforts as well. Looking forward to bringing this project to fruition.
Well, for me, honestly, I love storytelling, and this is a big story. And they all have individual stories, and I have the privilege of documenting this. George and his story, the Soundplex and that story, Brandon and his story, and the fact that Frank Sinatra has a spiritual part of this thing. It's a big story, and the fact that there are 11 songs in this arrangement that were never recorded that Brandon brought to life, and I had the privilege and honor of being a part of this thing and sharing that with the world. It's mind blowing and wonderful, and I just love the idea of having this be shown, worldwide. And with that, and with your help and with these guys, we're making this happen, and that's phenomenal, and I'm grateful for it. So that's all I have to say for that.
Well, for me, Frank Sinatra is my hero. And I remember the day he died. I came home from school. It was the day after he died. It was when it was on the news, and my grandmother was just heartbroken. And, this is the least I can do for someone that has brought so much joy and pleasure to my life and my grandparents' lives and so many people, everybody's life. How many people have a favorite Frank Sinatra song? And to be able to bring something new to the world that's connected to him, it's an honor. It's a great weight on my shoulders because it has to be done right. It has to be done with the utmost respect to Mr. Sinatra and the Sinatra family. And it's just, if there's one thing I do in my entire life, I want to make sure that my children's 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 children know who Frank Sinatra was and who those arrangers were, and that this music think about it. The music is doing pretty well for itself. Some of these songs were written in the 30s or the 20s, and they still sound fresh and new now. But for me, it's about preserving Sinatra's history and just keeping it going forward. I'm never going to impersonate Frank Sinatra. I have never claimed to be a Sinatra impersonator. I just want to give the world the music that he made, probably the most famous of all the people that do that music. I just want to keep it going, again, with the utmost love and respect for him and his legacy. And I realize the pressure that I put on myself with that.
Well, everybody, you have not only heard the story, but you've heard it from every one of my incredible guests. You've met the team, and I'm extremely grateful to be a part of what you're doing. And I want to now invite everybody that has watched this show or listened to the show. If you've only listened to it, you should watch it. The content you see with the work that they do is just literally going to blow your mind. And so we're launching the Lost Sinatra, A Voice for Sinatra's Lost arrangements. Yes?
Yes.
Is that right, Brandon?
What do they call it? The Lost Sinatra-Basie? A voice.
A film
The
for
Lost
the ages.
Sinatra-Basie?
Well, the album is the Lost Sinatra-Basie.
All right,
You should tattoo it on your arm, Ed.
for the
You should
campaign.
tattoo it on your arm.
Everybody that knows me and watches my show or listens to it, they know I got issues. I do the best I can, but this is what I want to do is I want to promote and let everybody know something very different is going to happen with this episode. This is your opportunity to practice kindness at a generational level. This is for real. So to preserve something that is beautiful, it's for future hearts to discover more than just modern music. Bringing in the culture and the legacy of our past is really something else for our kids. And like Brandon said, for our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids. And that journey begins right now with putting this podcast together. And this is the moment to preserve a golden era with what we're doing. And I want to thank all of you for being on the show today. Brandon, Art, George, this has been really great. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of this in the days to come.
Thank you.